Mauryan society. Now we are in 3rd century BCE. Just to recollect how our society is evolving from prehistoric time period. We have to see from prehistoric period onwards how our society is evolving continuously. Then only we can really appreciate, because Ashoka's Dhamma is not something developed out of vacuum. It is a context. And this topic is very important for you, both for optional point of view as well as from polity point of view also, in terms of governance. And at the same time, in terms of ethics also. We are going to see how they are closely related to each other. In GS also, this topic you can use freely. You can use quotations. You can use Ashoka Dhamma very frequently, no issue. And also, it is very, very crucial in understanding our modern day governance also. And particularly in the context of growing violence in the society. And in paper 1, GS, in society, communalism concept is there. Again, there also you can use this concept. And obviously, in history, optional, this is an important question related to Ashoka Dhamma and Mauryan society. Now, one thing, to understand Mauryan society, first we have to scan our entire history from prehistoric time period. Second one, also we need to understand what is happening near our boundaries also. For that, we need to have this idea. First one, if I draw timeline. I will take the reference 7000 BC. In our Indian subcontinent, 7000 BC is known for which development? Yes, Sanju, Ayan, Kanchan, and Anubhav. 7000 BC in our Indian subcontinent, which development happened? First village setup. What is the site name? Very good. In this location, Mehergarh. First village. First village means the moment you understand village, it is collection of people. The moment collection of people come, they form a society. And the relationship among these people, social relations, we don't know. This is Neolithic period. In Neolithic period, we don't know what is the segregation of their society, because we don't have references of literary references. Only archaeological references we have, and only we can understand that social-wise, there were some kind of social differences like rich and poor. When it comes to their burial grounds, in some places, we got rich pottery, in some place poor pottery, a rich object, poor objects, different graves. Only this much we can understand that different social sections are there. Some were enjoying comforts, some were with less comforts. These people now gradually after 7,000, 6,000, it is growing. Now by 3000 BC, we are seeing Neolithic period in this part also. In 2500 BC, in this location also. Now we are in 3rd century BC. Now let us think like 250 BC. Now we are trying to get by Mauryan time period, the society is already, it's reaching to the next mature stages. Because Indian subcontinent is home for many people for so many centuries. These institutions and these ideas are also entering into the new ages. Whatever these ideas later, it became in this part, Indus Valley civilization. If we talk, when it comes to social evolution, if we consider early stage also, mature stage also, later stage also, from 3200 to 1900 BC, Indus Valley civilization is there. Some of these Neolithic elements enter into Chalcolithic and Chalcolithic elements into Indus Valley civilization. And after this, late Harappan and post-Harappan. These elements, they entered into Ahar culture, Malwa culture, Jorvi culture. By the time we reach 1000 BC, now already society is intermixing. These ideas entering into here, these ideas entering into here. Already social interaction is very common in the Indian subcontinent. Meanwhile, around 1500 BC, early Vedic period also started. These people have society, social ideas, for example, Proto-Shiva, one example, Mother Goddess worship, as a kind of social. Similarly, these kind of the people, how they look also different in these locations. And now in early Vedic people, here new traditions emerged according to Rig Veda. We know about their society through Rig Veda. Initially, there was no Varna concept. They were only talking like based on the profession, priestly class, Rajan and common people wish. And after this, they entered into Gangetic Valley, 1000 BC to 600 BC. By this time, in Vedic society itself, Varna system emerged. According to their understanding, now you see, when these people came, now obviously mixing with already who are settling there. In these locations, post-Harappan, OCP culture was also there. And it translated, gradually it mixed with the painted graveyard settlements. The mixing between Aryans and non-Aryans takes place. Aryan ideas influence the non-Aryan world also. Non-Aryan world influences the Aryan world also. In that social circumstance, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra emerged by 600 BC. Now, you see this intermixing, by this time you get some idea that intermixing is very, very common feature to our Indian subcontinent. There was already one question also in UPSC that whatever Varna system model, Varnashrama Dharma, it is a theoretical model rather than a real description of Indian society in reality. Because whatever we are talking, this Varna system, it is mainly limited to the Aryan world or later Vedic period, wherever the Brahmanical tradition is more dominant. They are very dominant in Gangetic Valley. Naturally, in this particular location, the ideas of Vedas, ideas of Brahmanas, ideas of Upanishads are very, very dominant in this location. It percolates to other areas also. But it takes time. That's why whatever ideas we are seeing in Gangetic Valley by 600 BC, it takes another 3-4 centuries to reach these ideas in this location. Because Sangam text by 250 BC, this is Mauryan time period. By Mauryan time period, here Sangam age also starts. In Sangam age, local Tamil cultural elements emerge. Now this Sangam age is also not isolated one. Again, this was also influenced by the previous generation. Before 250 BC, already Neolithic settlements. By 1000 BC, we are going to see a new description called megalithic. Neolithic, Chalcolithic, megalithic, on top of it, Sangam age society is going to emerge. Now these elements are here. Now gradually from north also these ideas will percolate. And similarly, the Deccan southern ideas also enter into the northern part. And today, broadly, we are sweepingly say that the Gangetic Valley culture or the Deccan culture. This difference is very, very natural phenomena because our geography is very extent, very large. And these geographical differences and also so many hilly areas are there, rivers are there, natural boundaries are there. In those times, communications are also not very common. Even today also, some village if you go to, educated people will feel that every part of India is owned by them, and also they will not feel psychologically that Kashmir is somewhere very far, Northeast is not very far for educated section. But illiterate people or village people, if you go and ask that where is Kashmir, where is Northeast, and they will not understand that where exactly is it part of India, that question also will arise. That shows that in the mind of the common people still, for these people, this area is still very far, and for these people, this area is very far. For these people, these areas are still very far in the minds, even though all belongs to the same country. In those times now, this is today, in 2023 I'm talking. Now you imagine in 250 BC or 600 BC, it would be like almost a completely different world. It takes a gradual time period to influence the other cultures, but that's why after few centuries, the southern elements you will find in northern elements you will find in southern, Harappan elements you will find in Aryan world elements you will find in non-Aryan areas as well. By 600 BCE in Varna system itself, now gradually more sacrifices emerged. This is Varna system. On top of it, slavery is there. Slavery is there. Gradually, now Aryan, non-Aryan world, intermixing takes place. Whenever intermixing takes place, now it becomes very critical for the theoretical model also to fit. Once intermarriages takes place between Brahmana and Kshatriya. If marriage takes place between Brahmanas, then the offsprings you consider them as Brahmanas. If marriage between Kshatriyas, Kshatriya offspring, that may take place. But once intermarriage takes place, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Vaishya and Shudra, Brahmana and Shudra. Now, how do you consider the offspring? Now, theoretical model will not fit here. The offspring will not fit either Brahmana or Shudra. Somewhere you have to give new name. That is how new concept in our Indian society emerged, that is Jati. Varna system and Jati. The English Varna is Vedic literature. Jati is also the Sanskrit literature. But when it comes to the English translations, by 16th century, now by 6th century BC itself, this is the condition. After 1000 years, now you are going to see intermixing of so many people. Within Aryan world this, and in non-Aryan world, tribal people are there. And non-Aryan village settlements, intermixing takes place, new jatis emerged. After post-Mauryan period, you are going to see intermixing of other people from Central Asia. By Mauryan time period itself, in northwestern part of India, this intermixing already started. How it started? From Iran, 500 BC itself, Parisians conquered Gandhara region. Gandhara region became part of Achaemenid Empire. That means Parisian cultures enter here. Already Indians are there, Parisians come there, intermixing takes place. Again, mixing. Again, if they are warriors, they will be given Kshatriya status. If they are philosophers or educated people, those who accepted Vedic studies, Brahmanas they become. Then trading Vaishya or agriculture Vaishya and other people considered Shudras. And slavery is very common. It is not only particularly related to Shudras, even a Brahmana also can become a slave for temporarily. Even Kshatriyas also can become slaves temporarily. If you know some story about Ramayana, Kashi is related to a king called Satya Harishchand, very famous in our Indian culture. And he himself was forced to become a slave because of some circumstances. That shows a Kshatriya also can become a slave, a Brahmana also can become slave, Vaishya also can become, Shudra also can become slave. But it is a temporary phenomena. Again, once they end their slavery status, once again they go back to their Varna fold. But mostly this slavery is associated with Shudras. Later gradually, now you see this, untouchables or Chandalas also going to emerge. Particularly whenever there is Brahmana woman and Shudra male, if intermarriage takes place, the offsprings, it is very difficult for the theoretical model to fit under either Shudra or under Brahmanas. Gradually such people became Chandalas, Shudras, then the poverty status pushed them to Chandalas. By Gupta time period, this became very severe. So during Mauryan time period itself, these institutions are emerging. And that is why Ardhashastra Kautilya also says, for different Varna, different judicial system. That means already this system is strongly prevalent by Mauryan time period. In this part, Achaemenid, again intermixing. Then after 300 BC, Greeks also. Now you see, within Indian subcontinent, within this geography itself, these many social dynamics are going on. On top of it, now Parisians are adding, Greeks are coming. In post-Mauryan, we are going to see many people from Central Asia. Shakas, Kushanas. And once again, in Iran also, a section called Parthians. Once again, when it comes to Greeks and Iranians in 500, 300 BC, their population is limited to northwest. But when it comes to Shakas, Kushanas and Parthians, particularly Shakas and Kushanas, their population enters into Gangetic Valley also. And when these people enters into Gangetic Valley, now this dynamic will change further. Gradually, after some time, Hunas will come. Once again, they have to fit in this. That is why, over a period of centuries, this jati became very dominant. In English translation, this jati became caste. The term Portuguese gave, the term they used is when Portuguese came here. Vasco da Gama discovered the sea route. In 15th and 16th century, in order to give a particular description to Indian society, these Portuguese people gave the name casta, and later that became in English caste. So this is how, but we generally use the term jati at this juncture. In Mauryan time period, Varna is description is this, jati description. This jati is because of intermixing. This is the real society. Theoretically, our society broadly divided into 4 Varnas like this, but when it comes to reality, this is how it is happening. This is at the social level. Now, on top of it, because of the evils within this, now new philosophies also emerged. First, please write up to here. Then we will go to Upanishads, Buddhism, Jainism. Under these circumstances, only these new ideas also emerged. These social dynamics plus religious differences, by Mauryan time period, society is becoming more and more complex. Under these circumstances, Ashoka is going to propagate Dhamma. Please note down this. Later, we will go to this. Are you able to follow? Any doubts up to here? This understanding is very crucial, and in rest of the time periods, we are just going to recollect this system. Please make a map and you just mention this is how the existing society, this is how intermixing is taking place. Draw India map and Neolithic village settlements. Gradually, this is how society is evolving, and you give particularly northwest interaction. Is it done, all of you? Shall I move to the next part? Now we have to come to this one. Geographically, we understood it. Timeline-wise, now by this time, because why I am particularly showing geography means, in this timeline, we cannot really imagine that in which part of Indian subcontinent what development is going on. Broadly, we talk like this is Neolithic plus Chalcolithic phase, and this is IVC phase, then 1500 to 1000 early Vedic period, then 600 later Vedic time period. In this line, we may think that this particular description is applicable to entire India. Neolithic, Chalcolithic, IVC, early Vedic period, later Vedic period. That is why if we don't have geographical idea, there is a problem that entire Indian history is related to early Vedic time period. Entire Indian history is related to later Vedic period. But now, as you get geographical idea now, this is Indus plain and this is Gangetic plain. And in other parts, some other developments are going on. That's why different geographic locations, you have to give different timelines. When it comes to Indus plains and Gangetic plains, this description suits 600 to 300 BC. Mahajanapadas, and from 321 to 185 Mauryans. Up to this point, up to 250 BC, different timelines for different geographic location. This is, for example, Indus plus Gangetic. And if you talk about central India or Deccan, then this timeline exactly will not come here. It will change. For example, here up to 3000 BC, this is Paleolithic stage only. Then after 3000, Neolithic plus Chalcolithic. Then up to 1000, this Chalcolithic Neolithic tradition continues, and in some cases Megalithic emerge. Then this continues. And in South India, by 300 BC, Sangam age also starts. And this Mauryan, that's why in Mauryan inscriptions, he mentioned about in Mauryan Empire, these Sangam kingdoms are not part of Mauryan Empire. Sangam kingdoms are separate entities. They were not part of Ashoka Empire. And Ashoka also didn't want to conquer these kingdoms, because after Kalinga war, he changed his policy. He wanted to influence the neighboring countries or neighboring kingdoms, but not through the war, but through Dhamma. Now you see this, both internal policy and foreign policy is taking shape, and these internal policy and external policy is becoming the blueprint for the even modern time period also. And today also, we want to follow the footsteps of Ashoka only. Our Indian constitution talks about what Ashoka Dhamma is saying. And our foreign policy is also talking about on the similar lines of what Ashoka is talking. We never wanted to conquer the neighboring countries. We always wanted to maintain peaceful relations. That is what Ashoka mentioned, and we are following his footsteps. This is how always you should be very, very careful in understanding the geography. When it comes to Northeast, this Northeast timeline will change further. This is northwest and Gangetic Valley, central Deccan, and when it comes to northeast, up to 1000. Paleolithic, Mesolithic, then after 1000, Neolithic. That's why after 1000, it takes almost a few centuries to enter these Aryan traditions. Aryan traditions enter in Indus and Gangetic Valley around 1000 BC. It emerged in 1000 BC in Gangetic Valley itself. So it takes at least a few centuries to enter into central India. It takes a few more centuries to enter into deep south. It takes a few more centuries to enter into northeast. This is how you need to have clear picture about, and same is the case with Indian society also. That's why our history optional has a specific question that explain the social dynamics of Sangam age. Explain the social conditions of Mauryan period. And here, the kind of Varna system, caste or Jati system emerged in Gangetic Valley is not that deep when it comes to Sangam age. And that is what you are going to describe when it comes to Sangam age society. But by Mauryan time period, the social dynamics, just we have seen that. Because already Neolithic, Chalcolithic, Indus traditions and Vedic traditions, tribal traditions continuously emerged, intermixing is taking place. On top of it, 600 BC, Buddhism, and before that, Upanishads, Buddhism, Jainism, Ajivaka, Charvaka, and these are only known sects, and there are so many other sects. In NCERT itself, you may find by 6th century BCE, there were 62 such sects emerged. You can see, even though theoretically Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra is saying, but in reality is completely different our social dynamic, social structure. Please note down this also. And later, one more aspect we have to discuss, that these religious philosophies, and later I will give you the description how Mauryan society, step by step. So always in Indian history, you keep tracking what is happening in the previous generation. After this, we are going to talk about sources. What sources are there to understand our Mauryan society? UPSC has asked a question in that respect also. Please let me know once it is done. Can I move to the next part? Okay. Now, to understand Indus and Gangetic Valley, now we are at this. By this time period, we got some literary evidence also. For example, 1500 to 1000 BC, we have Rig Veda. 1000 to 600, later Vedic texts also emerged. And associated Vedic literature, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads, they also emerged. These literary sources, they give clues as that how the society was there 1500 to 600. Mostly this literature talks about the Aryan world. They mostly focused on Aryan world, and when it comes to non-Aryan world, they describe the terminologies like dasa and dashyos, panis, different terminologies. But when it comes to Aryan world, within Aryan fold, they describe their society like Brahmana fourfold Varna system. After 600 BC, a new type of text on top of Vedic literature emerged. Sutra literature, Dharma Sutras, Grihya Sutras, they emerged. And around 450 BC, Ashtadhyayi, Panini's grammar Ashtadhyayi also came. It also talks about Mahajanapadas and the existing social condition. That is another source. After 600 BC, Buddhism, Jainism also emerges. Gradually, Buddhist literature also started. In 483 BC, when first Buddhist council was held, Sutta Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka was written. And Sutta Pitaka, Vinaya Pitaka was composed, and those also give some clues about Indian society. By 300 and 250 BC, we got Ardhashastra also. Ardhashastra, statecraft, it also gives clues about Indian society. By this time, we have got some foreign accounts also. In Chandragupta Mauryan time period, Greek ambassador Megasthenes came, and Megasthenes have given Indica. It also gives information about Indian society. Now for historians, what is historian challenge is, they have to study this existing literature up to Mauryans, and they have to extract what exactly imaginary or the mythical part of these text references and what is the real part. Particularly, that is challenging even with respect to Indian literature also. That is even more challenging when it comes to foreign resources also. For example, Indica, Megasthenes has written Indica. But how does he know how much society he could have experienced in his stay in Pataliputra? Whatever references, whatever other people are saying to him, he might be considering that is the Indian society. And he cannot go and visit every part of Indian subcontinent. He used to reside in Pataliputra, and neighboring areas he might have visited. But remaining part of Indian subcontinent, he don't know what is happening. And only if someone says he listened it, and he might be considering that is the exact nature of the society, and he was describing India. On top of it, problem emerged for the historians that the original copy of Indica was missing. Already Megasthenes himself has described in a different way. Now, this original copy of Indica was missing. After few centuries, after 100 BC, 100 AD, 200 AD, till the time Roman authors were also using Indica as a reference to understand about India. Now, this Indica became secondary reference, tertiary reference. So, it became like We don't know exactly what Megasthenes said. It's all about what we have said, like Arian, Diodorus, some other authors, they used to quote Megasthenes Indica said like this. But really Megasthenes said, or Arian is saying, or Diodorus saying, we don't know. But Megasthenes quoted. Same is the case with our Jataka stories and our Buddhist histories also. We don't know whether author is saying that Buddha said like this or really Buddha said something. There will be so many references that in one of the incidents Buddha said like this. But really those words are really Buddha words, or the author is just attributing those words to Buddha. Same problem with Ardhashastra Kautilya's Ardhashastra also. In fact, the problem with Kautilya's Ardhashastra is even more complex. Whatever text surviving today, Ardhashastra, the entire text was not composed during 3rd century BC. Few books of Ardhashastra were written or related to the ideas of Mauryans, and remaining ideas belong to post-Mauryan, and some are belongs to Gupta time period also. By Gupta time period, when Ardhashastra was composed, it got the ideas of Gupta ideas, post-Mauryan ideas, and Mauryan ideas also. Now, challenging is which part belongs to Mauryan idea, which belongs to post-Mauryan. With these limitations only, we have to reconstruct our Mauryan society. But broadly, this is what we can describe how our Indian society is there. Please write one question. UPSC has asked this. When it comes to Mauryan society, we have two sources. One is Ardhashastra, second one is Megasthenes Indica. These are two important sources to understand it. UPSC has asked in a different way. Please write this question. And this particular question, there is answer to write after Mauryans also. But for Mauryans also, this particular question is relevant. While using the accounts of the accounts of foreign writers, I am posting the question in chat box. You can take a look. While using the accounts of foreign writers, historians must distinguish between statements based on hearsay and those grounded in perceptive observations. Elaborate with examples. That is one question. Now, you write one more question that is also related to society. Write about the contents of Ashoka's Dhamma. Ashoka's Dhamma and reasons for Ashoka's keenness. Reasons for Ashoka's keenness to propagate Dhamma. So for these two questions, some part of the answer to these questions lies in Mauryan society, and where Ardhashastra talks about something, Indica says something else, we have to differentiate this one. Now, Mauryan society. Before I give the points, just to make this India map, the Mauryan society means this is Mauryan Empire. That is why for same time period, question can be asked, describe the Sangam age society, separate question. Mauryan Empire society, separate question. Mauryan Empire means in this geographic location, how the society was there. When it comes to Sangam period, Sangam states. And in this geographic location, how the society was there. That description comes through Sangam literature. In this location, whatever we know about this particular time period, this is Greek kingdoms. That's why we have Indica. Ardhashastra. Then by this time period, now when it comes to religions, already by 300, we are going to see Jainism, Buddhism, Vedic Brahmanical religion, and on top of it, tribal religions. You cannot categorize how many such religions are there. Then Ajivaka, Ajivika. And when it comes to this part, before Greeks, Parisians came, later Greeks came. That means in this part, Parisian religion, Zoroastrianism, and Greek gods are there. And when it comes to this part, again, you can simply say like tribal religions. In other terms, In some part like hunting, gathering stage, that means primitive religions. Primitive beliefs. These many religions are there. Society also, Brahmanical literature is giving different theoretical model, but reality is different. Now Maurya, Ashoka is ruling this empire. Different people have different religions, different social status. On top of it, different languages. Buddhist texts were written in Pali language. Buddha taught his teachings in Pali language. Mahavira and Jainism followed Prakrit language, Sanskrit language. And when it comes to Northwest, Aramaic language, Greek language. When it comes to scripts, Brahmi scripts, Greek scripts, Kharosthi script, Aramaic script. See, diversity of Indian society. That is why particularly Mauryan Empire is so interesting and also very, very important in order to understand the present day ruling also. Because today also our geography is almost coterminous. Mauryan Empire almost ruled entire Indian subcontinent. And today also we have almost most of this, and on top of it some more extra areas also came under Indian state now. Same differences are now also continuing. Now today we are talking about unity in diversity. We have diversity on, at the same time, unity also. Different people have different languages, different religions, different local customs, local traditions. Still, they should accept the state authority. Similarly, today we have to accept the constitution. Everyone should accept the constitution also, but still they are free to follow their own customs, own languages. In 3rd century BCE, managing this much geographic land is definitely a great challenge. That is why a new kind of innovative tool is required to rule this. That is what Ashoka brought, that innovative tool, Ashoka Dhamma. And it is not surprising also that the Ashoka principles today we are following. For example, when it comes to our national flag, in between we have chakra that we call Ashoka Chakra, because he has given the path how to rule this diverse land. One example, Saranath, he gave different pillars in different parts of Indian subcontinent, and a Saranath pillar has 4 lines, and our 4 lines is our national emblem. Again, attributed to Ashoka. So this shows how Ashoka's rule is important, because at the time period itself, whatever we are having today's society, Mauryans were also having similar type of society, and they found a new innovative tools how to rule peacefully. You mentioned this. Is it clear? There are so many things. It's not only about history optional. History optional, you will get 1 question, 2 questions. But this content is very, very important in rest of your preparation. Please let me know after finishing this. Done? Very good. Now by this time you should get complete clarity. By Mauryan time period, if you understand this one, then post-Mauryan period, you can give the same description, you can use the same map, just add that in post-Mauryan, you just include one arrow, Shakas, Kushanas, Parthians, that's all. Rest of these things are common. After Guptas, again you are going to the same thing. On top of it, in the end of the Guptas, you can just give Hunas. Same description and same society. After Guptas or during emergence of Delhi Sultanate, Rajput's time period, you can give similar description, because whatever traditions started here, we are going to see continuously, even today also, in 21st century also, we are seeing similar. And it is not surprising in 10th century AD, we saw similar society. On top of it, we are going to just add Turkish. Same thing. And now by this time, new religion will come, Islam will come, and already existing society, existing religions, thoughts are there. Now one more thought will come to Indian subcontinent, Islam. Dominant. And in fact, in 7th century itself, Islam reaches Kerala. During the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad himself, Kerala, Islam touches. Immediately after the death of Jesus himself, Christianity also reaches in the form of Saint Thomas. Christianity reaches Kerala. Christianity, by 17th century or 16th century, Christianity becomes more prevalent when it comes to these coastal areas because of European settlements. Society is same thing, but only new elements are going to add. It's like a boiling pot. Different historians used to term, it's like a boiling pot. Everyone will come and everyone will adapt to this kind of, this particular land is having unimaginable assimilative capabilities. That means whoever comes here, without losing the previous character, it is assimilating the new character. That is very, very unique to this particular land. And today we are proudly saying that this land is Bharat. Different names. This is what the significance of this particular geographic location. Let any people come, it is always accommodating. This geography is always accommodating without losing the previous character, accommodating the new character. In general studies itself, there was a question that while Egypt and Mesopotamians or Greek civilizations abruptly ended, but why Indian civilization is continuing? Because of this assimilative character. Despite the differences, still we are able to understand the differences we are living. So it is very natural. The secular way of life, this is what we call secular way of life, is very, we cannot exactly take what Europeans or Britishers were thinking secularism means, because their geography is different, their society is different. They were living in a different geographic scenario. There, when Pope became very, very dominant, their people wanted complete separation of the state with the church. Because their society, their history is different. But you cannot directly apply that blueprint to Indian secularism. Secularism is not something new for the Indian context. Because in Mauryan time period itself, both people as well as the state, they know, even though the term secularism is not there, but the way they are living is equal to the secular way of life only. That is why this is able to sustain differences of opinion also. This is able to assimilate the new character without losing the old character. And that is the specialty of India. That is what attracted the people from rest of the world. It is the same idea which attracted Alexander also. It is the same idea it attracted Europeans also, West Asians also, Central Asians also, everyone. Because this land is home for every type of idea. People, once they come here, they can live peacefully without losing their character. And on top of it, rulers like Ashoka also showed the way how a monarch can rule with diverse land. If these differences creating trouble, then obviously rulers also follow different policies. By ruthless policies, they will try to exterminate the differences. That is what in some other societies. So they saw differences as hindrance to the progress of the state, and they completely uprooted the old ideas and they imposed the new ideas. As a result, old idea completely annihilated, only new ideas surviving. For example, when it comes to best example, today also we are seeing that Shia and Sunni conflict when it comes to this. This particular land, Islam is so dominant that almost the previous ideas almost got exterminated. But when it comes to India, we are still able to survive the old ideas, ancient ideas, at the same time accepting the new ideas also. That is why Indian culture is surviving because of this nature. Whenever you try to force, any society will not function peacefully. We have to know how to live with differences, how we should accept the other religions, how we should promote the tolerance. In our Indian society, that is inbuilt, ingrained in our DNA, you can say. So this is the existing scenario when Ashoka was ruling. Now we will go one by one, step by step. You keep writing this. Now we have to describe. Now this is the existing scenario. Now how we have to write in the answer. That's what I am going to explain you, dictate. Write this. Give the heading, Mauryan Society. Mauryan Society from the perspective of Greek accounts and Indian accounts or Indian sources. This is how UPSC will ask the question. How Greeks, at this point of time, Greek sources are also only there. That's why foreign accounts and Indian accounts. And the previous question, that while using the accounts of foreign writers, historian must distinguish what are the hearsays and what is the reality. For that question also, you can use this. If question is about describe Mauryan state, you can use according to these sources, this is what the description, and you can counter one by one. Write this. Megasthenes indica. Megasthenes indica provide Megasthenes indica provides an important insight into Indian society during Mauryan period. Now you know that now how our society, really Indian society is there. Now how Greeks were imagining and how they are saying. Now by seeing this list, you yourself will come to the counter views, that how far it is true, how far the reality. Greek authors, next point, Greek authors described Indian society into 7 groups. 7 groups. 1, philosophers. 2, cultivators. 3, hunters and headsmen. 4th, artisans and traders. 5th one, soldiers. 6th one, spies. 7th one, kings, counselors. These are the 7 distinct group. They describe like Megasthenes described, but Megasthenes account is missing. Greek authors, they later use the references of Megasthenes and they quoted. Philosophers, cultivators, hunters and headsmen, artisans and traders, soldiers, spies, kings, counselors. But this is it the description? He is more or less talking about the kind of professions, and he did not include all the professions also. You say this, cultivators, agriculture, hunting, domestication of animals, artisans and traders, these are various economic activities. These are various economic activities, or you can say professions, economic professions. And same is the case with soldiers also, it is another profession. Spies, another profession. Kings, counselors, profession. Philosophers, educated people. We can say this could be like Brahmanas and Shramanas. Philosophers means those educated thinkers. Thinkers nothing but already Varnashrama system is there, where the 4th stage is sannyasi. Many sannyasi, even when Alexander reached northwestern part, he also had an encounter with sannyasi. So that shows this is very common from Upanishadic time period itself, Shramana tradition, or simply you can say orthodox and unorthodox. So this is how Megasthenes thought that Indian society is like this. Now step by step we are going to counter it. You give the subheading philosophers, or you simply say critical analysis of Megasthenes society. Critical analysis of Megasthenes society. First you give the heading philosophers. Philosophers. Now it is critical analysis. Greek sources. Megasthenes described sophists and philosophers sophists and philosophers were given high respect in society. Were given high respect in society. Next, Strabo divided philosophers into Brahmanas and Shramanas. Indian sources. From Indian sources, Shramanas are a range of ascetic groups and sects such as Buddhist, Jaina, Ajivika. Greeks simply mentioned, that means they simply categorized all the people into two, Brahmanas and other philosophers. When it comes to Indian sources, the Shramanas also have distinct identity. Buddhist monks, Jaina monks, Ajivaka monks, different monks, their ideology is different, their way of living is different. Again, distinction, but at least somewhat close to Indian society. Next, cultivators. Megasthenes, Greek sources, Indian sources. Megasthenes writes about cultivators. Greek writers struck, that means they were surprised, struck by the large scale of agrarian operations. Large scale of agrarian operations. Large scale of agrarian operations. All Greek accounts speak about fertility of soil, presence of rivers, and plentiful rainfall. Indian sources. Arthashastra also mentions about various agrarian operations. So historians have to compare like this, what other sources are saying. It is like what Indian sources are saying, what foreigners are thinking. If it is matching, that means it is the probable most realistic description. If there is a mismatch, then we have to go for some other source also. Likewise, historians compare and come to the conclusion. That means cultivators also matching. Third one, hunters and headsmen. Greek sources. Greek sources. Megasthenes mentioned these people lived outside agrarian settlements. People lived outside agrarian settlements. Megasthenes mentioned villages, and outside villages, these people are living. Indian sources. According to Ardhashastra, forest areas are also controlled by the state. Forest areas are also controlled by the state. Now you see this. According to Greek sources, outside the village settlements, they are living freely. But when it comes to Ardhashastra, outside the village settlements are also controlled by the state. Forest also controlled by the state. Forests could not be privately cleared. Forests could not be privately cleared, and clearance was supervised by the state. This statement is almost similar to present day also situation. We cannot clear the forest. Forest clearance, forest department clearance is required. In those times itself, Ardhashastra is saying state also should control the forest areas because every part of the state belongs to the state. State should get as much revenue as possible from every resource of the state. Next, non-agrarian activity. According to Greek sources, these people, hunters and headsmen, they were living outside. But Indian sources saying forest areas are also not free from the state, they are also controlled. And on top of it, headsmen, they were living within villages, not the outside villages. Next point within this, non-agrarian activities such as herding, non-agrarian activities such as herding of animals were practiced even within villages. Within villages, not the outside villages. Not the outside villages. Artisans and traders, next one. artisans and traders. Greek sources. Greek authors suggest that all artisans were employed by state. All artisans were employed by state and exempted from paying taxes. All artisans were employed by the state and exempted from paying taxes. You see this statement. Do you think there is truth in this statement? As per your understanding, do you think this statement is fully true? Anyone? Do you think this statement is completely true? All artisans were employed by the state and exempted from paying taxes. No, there were private corporations called guilds. Guilds were there. Some artisans were part of these guilds. Some were individual private artisans are there. And of course, some people might be employed in the state also. And you see this. Suppose if Westerns are relying completely in understanding Indian society on Greek sources, now what understanding they will get? All artisans employed by the state. And if someone who is living in the 1950s and 60s, in those circumstances, entire world was divided into two parts, communist world and capitalist world. And if a history student reading this statement that if a Western student who is studying about India and they are depending on Greek sources, if they study this, all artisans are employed by the state, that means they think that in ancient times, Indian society or Indian state was a communist state. So that kind of inference, the possibility of drawing the inference. But Indian sources are having different opinion that you write this. Indian sources. Most of the artisans either worked individually or members of guilds. Members of guilds. When it comes to artisans, this is the statement. These guilds are very powerful. These guilds are very powerful and were extremely influential. These guilds are very powerful and extremely influential as patrons of religious sects. As patrons of religious sects. In fact, these guilds only the reason behind the emergence of Buddhism and Jainism as strong religions. They got the patronage. These guilds got the patronage to new religious ideas, Buddhism, Jainism and other sects, And these guilds have the sufficient wealth also to make them very powerful. And this shows how powerful these guilds are, and they are influential on the state matters also. So that shows it is not that every artisan is controlled by the state. Now when it comes to traders, one point when it comes to Greek sources, right under Greek sources, Megasthenes says Indians did not borrow or lend money. Megasthenes says Indians did not borrow or lend money. They did not borrow or lend money on interest. Again, this is also not correct. This side you write. Megasthenes was wrong. Megasthenes was wrong with respect to money lending activities. We are in 3rd century BCE, and these money lending activities were going on in Mahajanapada time period itself. When Brahmanical texts were against this, Buddhism, Jainism emerged out of this opposition. So that shows Megasthenes was wrong with respect to money lending, since money lending was known and practiced from early times. From early times. And this is why I have given this timeline. To understand society at this point of time, you should have idea what already happened before that. Because these elements are going to continue. And suddenly if someone like Megasthenes come and observe, they might observe what is happening in front of their eyes, or only if someone says. But that is not the true description of entire Indian society. He might be observing only few samples, or few people, might be whoever he described or whoever he observed, they were not following the practices of money lending. But the outside of his domain, people were following, because we have the references since very early times. Trading activities. Fifth one, soldiers. Greek sources. Mauryans maintained a standing army. Mauryans had a standing army. Greek authors mentioned about the strength of Mauryan army. And in this case, Indian sources also true. Kautilya's Ardhashastra also refers to the army. Even though Greek sources mention different strength of Mauryan army, but the maintenance of army is true when it comes to Indian sources as well. Spies. spice. And you will see difference when it comes to Greek sources and Indian sources, Ardhashastra. Greeks said that the spies were most trusted persons spies were the most trusted persons, and you see this, and never lied. So sometimes Megasthenes goes to the extremes. Spies were the most trusted people and they never lied. When it comes to Ardhashastra, recommended. Ardhashastra don't believe the spies directly. It verify what spies are also saying. So that shows Mauryans, if Ardhashastra was followed by the Mauryan state, it was almost entrenched everywhere. Every part of Indian state is visible everywhere. Kautilya recommended a spy's report. A spy's report should be corroborated by 3 other sources. Spy's report, directly it will not take the report, corroborated by 3 other sources. Then only based on that decision can be taken. Otherwise, if some spy says some people are revolting and the king cannot go and crush them ruthlessly, and it has to be verified by the other sources, then only king can take the final decision. Next, king's counselors. 7th one. King's counselors. Megasthenes said this group was the smallest in number. This group was the smallest in number. They included highest administrative functionaries. Highest administrative functionaries. Indian sources also refers to king's counselors. Ardhashastra referred them as mantris or amatyas. That means this also true about this. But if you observe, Megasthenes Indica never mentioned Varna system. He never talked about slavery also. But Varna system, Jati and slavery, they were the regular social pattern of Indian society. He did not mention it. That is how whatever he mentioned, also this is not the only. And in fact, these are the various professions. There are so many other professions like potters are there, carpenters are there, and he did not talk about them professions also. He did not describe the Indian society fully. But nonetheless, that means, however, despite that limitation, these Greek sources gives some kind of collaboration to our Indian society. This is next one. Next, you give the heading slavery. Slavery. Megasthenes never mentioned about slavery. Whereas Indian sources referred to slaves and enslavement. Kautilya's Ardhashastra described different kinds of slaves. It also talks about Vishti, forced labor, a form of slavery. Ashoka's inscriptions also give the reference to 150,000 prisoners of war or enslavement of people in the Kalinga War. And before Ashoka inscriptions, before Kautilya Ardhashastra also, in Vedic literature also, Brahmanas, we have references, and in Buddhist literature also, references are there. Even in Buddhist references, like slaves are not directly allowed to join the Buddhist Sangha unless the slaves were freed by the masters. This is one of the critical assessment of Buddhism also, that Buddhism, Jainism, they know the reality of the society. Varna system, fourfold Varna system. But Buddhism and Jainism, they were very practical religions. They did not want to completely destroy this system, but they gave more liberal approach to the existing system. That's why Buddhist sources also talk about slavery. They said that Buddhist monk, a slave cannot become Buddhist monk only unless slaves are freed from the masters. So likewise, Indian sources give a lot of reference to slaves, but when it comes to, this could be the conclusion you give, this could be because the way Indian slaves were treated, is different from the way Greeks treated slaves. When it comes to Greek society, the slaves were treated very harshly. But when it comes to Indian slavery, the way they treated slaves is completely different. Comparing with the Greeks, It is more humane. Probably because of that, Megasthenes might not have distinguished between slaves and normal people. That could lead him to the conclusion that there is no slavery in India. And next one, you give about next one also. Lies. Megasthenes said, Indians never lied. This is another his observation. Indians never lied. Do you think it is the true description of Indian society? If you go back to, he is talking in 300. In 600 BC itself, we are in 300 BC Megasthenes. In 600 BC or say 500 BC, when Buddha was teaching, when Jaina was teaching, when Vardhamana Mahavira was teaching, when Buddha was teaching, one of the fundamental principle is telling the truth. Buddhism, Jainism and other sects, they were saying that people should not tell the lies. They should tell the truth. Those who tell the truth, they are following the right path. And what is the need of saying this? People should always tell the truth. That means there must be so many people must be lying in different occasions for different circumstances. That's why this became one of the evil in the society. That's why new religions talked about truth and non-violence. Truth and non-violence became very fundamental concepts to Buddhism and Jainism. And these are the same truth and non-violence Gandhiji also used. Satyagraha. Truth and non-violence only. Now you see, when it comes to Indian society, this is the reality. But Megasthenes said, Indians never lied. But Indian society, the evidence is showing the otherwise. Now this is how, when it comes to foreign sources, they used to glorify on some accounts, they used to degrade on some other accounts. This is what you have to see as historians. Historians should differentiate between what is truth and what is reality. When it comes to Indian sources, this is always a challenging one when it comes to reinterpretation of Indian history or reconstruction of the Indian history. For most part of our history, we don't have the literary resource. But for some part of history, even though we have literary resource, we have this challenge. What is truth? What is not truth? And that is where the profession of historians come into play. So this is how the Indian society. Now, some other features of Indian society. You give this next. And this is very common, like earlier one, whatever Mahajanapada society, Vedic society, whatever we are talking, same thing. Varna system. Varna system, just I am giving the only points like this. You keep writing. Varna system, fourfold division. Next one, Jati system emerged out of intervarna marriage. Intervarna marriage. Next one, Ashrama system. 4 stages of life. Four stages of life. Next, family. It's a continuation of the previous trend. Continuation. You can write these things even for the present day society also in GS1. Male member lead families. That means patriarchal society. Women. Women condition is like this way. It's like a gradual decline. Suppose if you take early Vedic time period, high status, later Vedic degrading, Mauryan period, by Gupta time period, more and more disabilities on women. So you can write about Mauryan society like more liberal in comparison with Guptas, but more rigid in comparison with later Vedic. Liberal in comparison with Gupta time period, but rigid in comparison with the previous time period. That is how this gradually the graph reaches. That is what socio-religious reformers in 18th, 19th century, they are going to attack. And in fact, this is not the first time in our history. Socio-religious reforms are women-related, women empowerment. People talk about women empowerment not for the first time in 19th century, in the form of Bhakti tradition. Bhakti saints are also going to attack. And when it comes to Buddhism, Jainism also in one kind of, they talk about women also, Buddhism, Buddhist monks, they allowed women also in the Sanghas. Because religious disabilities were there and Buddha allowed women also to be part of Buddhist Sangha. Often these religious reforms often question this and they try to reform, and that is even today also we are talking about women related laws. In present day, Indian Constitution, Indian Parliament, these are the institutions which are talking about women related issues. Women issues. Education. More literate comparing with the previous. Generations. That is why when Ashoka inscriptions, he gave inscriptions in writing format, means people must be there who are there to read these inscriptions. At least a few people might be there who read and write. Otherwise, to whom inscriptions are written? If there was no one to read, then how can Ashoka give inscriptions in a writing format? If they are writing, that means people are there how to read and write also. Literate society. Varnashrama system, Jati system, family, women, education. And other elements, whatever Greeks were saying. And when it comes to women, you can write one point also. Women were recruited as palace gods. A special women force will be there to protect the king also. Women soldiers, palace guards. So unless there is a liberal society in comparison with the next generation, this is not possible. All right, these are various social elements. These 7 segments of Indian society, what Megasthenes mentioned, all these things, like you can mention, this is how Greek accounts mentioned, this is how Indian sources, critical analysis. On top of it, whatever we have written about Mahajanapada time period society or later Vedic period society, that society elements will continue by this time period. Now, in this circumstance, we are going to see tomorrow Sunday, day after tomorrow, Monday, Dhamma. Under these context, now there were different religious ideas are there. We will see religions and religious tolerance, Ashoka Dhamma, and contribution of Mauryans to art and architecture also. Because Mauryans, in a way, they are very first in many sense. They are the first to build the Pan-India Empire. They were first to introduce a concept called Dhamma in administration. And when it comes to even foreign relations also, they were first to maintain foreign relations in the modern sense. And when it comes to architecture contribution also, they were the first to carve out the rock cut architecture. In post-Mauryan, we are going to see Ajanta, Ellora, many caves in Gupta time period also. But first time Barabar caves and these things, Barabar, Nagarjuna Hill, cave tradition, carving out caves. Bhimbetka, naturally available caves, but human man-made caves we are going to see in Mauryans. For the first time in our history, a particular book called Ardhashastra on statecraft. It is like you can think like something kind of constitution for the Mauryan state. On top of it, rulers, they followed their own policies like Ashoka Dhamma also. That is also another kind of innovation first time. That is why Mauryan, even today also in public administration, Mauryan society, Mauryan state is very important. In order to talk about secularism, we bring the references of Mauryan state again. When we talk about art and culture, cave tradition, we bring about Mauryans. When we talk about international relations, peace treaties, Chandragupta Maurya Seleucus Nicator peace treaty in northwestern part, we again bring about Mauryans. Whatever blueprint they have given for the Pan-Indian Empire, now people are going to strive for like Mauryans. Buddhist traditions, they glorify Ashoka like universal monarch. Because he propagated Buddhism, naturally he is a hero, great hero for Buddhist tradition. And they are going to call him as Chakravarti. And this Chakravarti concept for the next generation becomes almost impossible for many rulers. Because after post-Mauryan, once again we are going to see the disintegration. No ruler is going to become the Chakravarti, those who are going to rule entire India under single authority. We see only in few occasions later, for example, Samudragupta or Chandragupta too. Even those people, Guptas also, they could not rule entire Indian subcontinent. Only half of India was directly under their control, but not the full India. In Delhi Sultanate also, again, except Muhammad bin Tughlaq for some time period, again disintegrated. Akbar, again, during Akbar time period also, he was not able to rule entire India. He could extend his empire only to middle of India. By Aurangzeb time period, we are going to see once again almost entire Indian subcontinent. That means, in very few occasions, A ruler could rule entire Indian subcontinent or the natural boundaries. This is what we call the natural boundaries of Indian Empire. In northwestern part, Himalayas. In northern part, Himalayas. In western part, ocean is the natural boundary. This side, Bay of Bengal, ocean is the natural boundary. Hills, oceans, natural boundaries. So to this extent, rulers could not rule. Ashoka is going to rule. That's why many rulers later going to aspire to become Chakravartin. That is why they could not really lead, they could not really conquer entire territory, but in terms of titles they used to take. Raja, Maharaja, Maharajadiraja. You will see only titles, big titles, but in terms of real territory, very small territory. Ashoka was ruling this much territory, still he has taken the title only Raja. You see, later many people are going to rule very small area. They used to take the titles Raja, Maharaja, Maharajadiraja, Paramabhattaraka. Many titles are going to come. It's only their aspiration to become that big, but in reality they could not. And Mauryans, they made it a reality. That is why, again, in this sense also, Mauryans are the first. Up to here, I was a little bit too slow also because it is very foundational for the rest of history. And whatever I described today, how our society is evolving. Till Mauryan period, if you are very good in understanding how our society evolved, in next period is just only, we are going to just revise. It's going to be revision. Whatever coming up to here, same thing we are going to add and some more elements. Only new elements, new people names, new names will come. But character is same thing only. Is it all right? Sanju, Kanchan and Anubhav, could you follow up to here how Mauryan society is there? All right.